Hey, everybody, welcome back. Back to Conversations on the Culture. We are continuing our conversation with Darryl Rodgers, and I had the privilege to LinkedIn, and I'm so glad, Darryl, that we had a chance to talk. It has been in part one, teaching story of how he lost his oldest son, Chase. Listen to that. Let his tragedy turn him into a bitter man. I know that he's been leaning on the Lord, he and his family, and have called out to the Lord how to better people's lives. And it's clear, Darryl, what the Lord is using your there for us, because this is epidemic in our country. Go too far off course, and I know you guys will blow me back in. Just the past week, I've had two that the latest hemp store has just anybody who, whoa, put the brakes on that. I'm from a non-professional medical profession, really concerned. This is just it has the potential for so much bad, guys. Can we talk that with wide stream available in the community? The consequences in my mind would be, Darryl, Paul, do you guys want to comment on that? CBD stores.
There's so many different directions we can go with that. So, I'm watching the legalization of marijuana taking place in different states now, and it's really troubling to me because I saw the issues that Chase had, and most, he did experiment with some other things, but marijuana was his biggest issue. And so what I say about it is what I'm seeing is not so much marijuana legalization as I am THC commercialization. THC being the psychoactive ingredient in the marijuana plant. What most people don't realize is that THC in the marijuana plant that was smoked back in the 70s and 80s was about 2 to 4%. Now it's about 25% on average. That's for people consuming the smokable marijuana, but through bud. But then the wax concentrates and some of the other forms, edible things like that, could be anywhere from 80, 90% and on up, almost 99% THC content. So I show people pictures of things, and because I hear the pro-pot people saying, well, it's just a plant or it's medicine, and I show them pictures of all these different items that contain THC, and I say, which one of these looks like a plant to you? Because none of them look like a plant. So it really is a drug, and it's much more dangerous. There's a lot of misinformation out there about it. It's much more dangerous than most people realize.
Yeah, it's Darryl, I like a lot of what you said. My biggest issue is if we expect the government to tell us what is and is not okay to put into our bodies, we're in trouble. That's as Kim knows, I do a lot of work on the Constitution. I really think it's up to the parents have to retake responsibility for raising their children. We've gotten to the point now where we expect the government to let the government take care of them. We hand them over to the government 6 to 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 9 months out of the year to tell them what they need to know, how they need to know it, what to live their lives. We expect the government to protect them in the playground. We expect the government to tell us to protect them in our car. We expect the government to protect them here. Part of it is since the parents aren't doing this, you have you're listening to a government that doesn't know your child. doesn't know their propensities, and certainly doesn't know what's best for them. But we're asking them to make these decisions for us. So when someone comes along and says, "Hey, if we make weed legal, you'll collect a lot of tax money," and guess what happens? The politicians say, "Yeah, that's great."
Yep. Yep. I'm with you 100% on that.
Boy, did you nail it. Discuss it a little bit. I did not realize that the pot folks have DC. It's a gold mine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is, and that's why it's headed the direction that it's headed right now. So my biggest issue with it is really twofold. In that, number one, I want to protect motorists, and number one, really, I want to protect the teenagers or whatever. So their minds are not developed yet, and they're not to that point where they can make those decisions for themselves. So, if we're going to legalize it, okay, that's fine, but they need to know the truth. People need to know the truth about what the substance is. And I think that's probably my biggest issue right now is that people are being lied to about and being misled about what this substance is and what the dangers are. It's almost impossible for law enforcement to police marijuana impaired driving versus alcohol impaired driving. It's just not the same. They don't have the same tools to be able to enforce it. So that creates a big issue. And then just the teenagers having access, further access to another impairing substance. Those are the two things that are most concerning for me.
Very well said. And I want to discussing fan. You've given me a couple of points that I'd like to hear you expound on. Teens create a life plan, establish the peer accountability, foster culture, and build their emotional intelligence.
Okay. So, when I go into schools to talk, if I come in with an anti-drug message or I come in to educate them about drugs, that's been my gut instinct right from the beginning that's not going to gain much traction with them. Number one, if I come in and I just start talking about how bad certain things are and they shouldn't participate in certain activities, they put up a wall right away and they're not listening to anything else that I say. If I come in and I'm trying to instruct them about and give them all this detailed information about substances and what they do, again, they just get bored. So they're just going to put up a wall again and really not hear what I have to say. So I come in and I tell Chase's story. I have a short film that's 23 minutes that we use sometimes, where they can hear from some of Chase's friends. And I'm able to reach them on a heart level with the story. And now they're open and they ask me questions. And sometimes I ask them a few questions to prompt a discussion, get it going. But we really start a conversation and it goes a lot better that way. So that's kind of the direction I had in terms of when I'm working with teenagers is I want to, reach them on that heart level first and let them understand that I care about them. That's why I'm there. And then the things that we talk about are, I ask them questions of like, why do teenagers sometimes turn to substance abuse? And confidence is a big issue. It's usually peer pressure is one of the big things. And there's a lack of confidence there is why they cave to peer pressure. And so my idea from the get-go has really been to try to help schools establish a positive peer culture. And really I want to do that by creating small accountability groups. And first, going back to the life plan part of it, it's all about, when I was 13, 14 years old, my brother was a helicopter pilot. And we're 18 years apart, just the two of us. And I looked up to him, and he helped me develop a plan to be able to get there as quickly as possible. And so, on my 18th birthday, I got my helicopter license, and kind of moved up from there and started flying. But I really, the fact that I had a plan for my life, and I believed I could achieve that plan because I had people pouring that belief into me, that made a big difference for me. So, and that's sort of been my thing with teenagers. Like, if we can build their confidence, and help them develop a life plan and help them have the confidence that they can achieve that plan, and then help them develop these accountability groups that they hold each other accountable to a set of standards, and that they kind of motivate each other, then we're establishing a positive peer culture in the schools, as opposed to, hey, it's cool to go hang out over here and use drugs and do all these and participate in all these self-destructive behaviors. So I'm working on a book right now and some other tools that will accompany that book that will help them do that. That will help them figure out, what kind of career paths they might be interested in and that they might be good at. I believe I'm a big believer in using words to build that confidence. So, in other words, I like to use a lot of positive affirmations. When I was a teenager, I had a very low self-esteem. In fact, I was my senior year of high school, I was most quiet. I was voted most quiet. And now I can stand in front of a group of 1,000 people and give a presentation. It doesn't bother me at all. But there was a process involved there, and I began to use positive affirmations that started helping me build my confidence. So I want to help these teenagers with that, because I see so much when I talk to them. I see this lack of confidence. If they don't believe they can do it, you can give them all the life plans. You can help them develop all the career plans you want. But if they don't believe they can achieve it, they're going to fall short. And then they're just going to fall back into, hey, I want to do what feels good right now. So that's kind of my idea in a nutshell there, and I'm beginning to work on that. I'm working in some schools. We don't have that program fully set up yet, but that's kind of the direction I've been headed for a while.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, it reminds you of the saying, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you're right. Facts and figures, they put adults to sleep. It's just teenagers are kind enough to let you know that they've checked out. Well, the adults just keep staring at you. But you're right. I like the idea of rather than focusing on the negative, working on the positive, finding the reinforcement. And one of the things with my daughter, and it's funny because when my daughter went through the teenage years, I was reminded of myself during those years. And, I remember when I was 16, 18 years old, my father was an idiot. When I turned 25, he was a genius, and I couldn't figure out how he got so smart so fast.
Right.
And I think a lot of that is perspective. When you're a teenager, your life experience is less than 2 decades. And things that you and I and Kim would look at and say, okay, that hurts, but that's not a big deal. It is a big deal.
Right.
And I think the relationships to say, it's okay. I know this hurts. I know this is uncomfortable, but do you trust me that in the long run, it's not as big a deal as it feels, help you in the perspective. I see things like we've talked about substance abuse, but I see things whether it's teenage suicide rates. You see this push towards homosexuality and transgenderism, and it's almost like the culture's reinforcing the worst parts of our nature. And where are these young people not starting when they hit high school, preferably starting when they're born, having a loving, caring adult that can say, yeah, that looks like a big deal right now, but it's really not that big a deal. We love you, and we do this not because we're upset with you. We do it because we love you, and we see the consequences that you don't see yet. And that has to happen before the issues show up. If you wait until the child's having issues, that's very hard to establish that trust. If it started when they're younger, and I'm reminded, I have a friend. He's an over-the-road truck driver. He was at the time, so he was gone a lot. And I remember, taking time with his sons, especially his two younger ones, and recognizing, what, there are things you're not going to talk to mom about. You just won't. I know, because I was your age once too, and your dad isn't always around, and maybe you don't even want to talk to your dad. You can come talk to me. And the rule I always put in place is whatever we say remains private between us, with the exception of if what we discuss involves harm to somebody, then you and I will go talk to them. I'm not going to go behind your back, but I will go with you, and we will tell them. And that level of trust that builds, I think, makes a big difference in a young person's life, to know they're not going to be quote unquote ratted out on, but also that there are things that they need to do, and there's somebody that will stand there and help them. They're not off on their own to do it.
Somewhere in there,
we're discussing.
You made me think about
here things for me.
Yes, Kim, you're just a little laggy.
That's all right. Go ahead.
Yeah. Phone the next time. Just very, very is just so on target. But maybe in the churches, guys, maybe some great target, so relationships and mentors the way we should. That's really what I wanted to comment. Showing up, and I hear, oh, we're losing our kids, or so many are leaving the church. Maybe in their minds there's nothing to leave. There weren't any strong relationships there, just guess thinking.
One of the things I was going to mention is just the fact that they are bombarded with negative thoughts, negative ideas through all forms of media today. It could be social media, news media. Not a lot of them are reading anymore, but movies, music is a big one. It has been for many years. I go back and look at some of the music that I listened to when I was a teenager, and if you read the lyrics, you see how negative a lot of those lyrics are. And that was one reason I wanted to bring in those positive affirmations. And I think that you can incorporate scripture into those. But kind of tying that into what you were saying about the churches, is I do see an opportunity for churches there with young people to find a way to reach them on a heart level and let them know that people care about them, and to figure out ways to create programs that are interesting to them. But also, I think one thing that concerns me with the churches a little bit is that sometimes we're so. You were alluding earlier to the churches being too concerned about numbers. Sometimes we're so overly concerned about with churches about trying to be too much like the culture, so that we attract people in. And then I think a lot of people come to church and they go, well, this isn't that much different than what I'm experiencing on the outside. What's the attraction here?
Yeah, you remind me of what Peter said, be ready to give an answer when they ask you. And the point that always came to my mind was, why would they bother asking you if you don't look any different than the world?
Right.
But I also remember Paul's admonition to, older men teach the younger men, older women teach the younger women. And what I loved about the way Paul put it was, it wasn't a program. I think we have developed this, I refer to as death by program within the church. Everything has to be a program. Everything has to be sorted and ordered and blessed by the powers that be, when what we really need are a few good men and women who are willing to do what's right, not because there's a program to do it, not because there's an order to do it, only because it's what our Lord asked us to do. I did not grow up in a Christian household, yet I remember as a child in New York City. I lived there till I was 11 years old. The entire every mother in the neighborhood at supper time, when they didn't know where their children were, called my mother, because our house was always the house that kids showed up at, because my mother wanted to make sure that they weren't off on the street. Everybody, all the kids were welcome at my house, and about 4:30, 5 o'clock, the phone would start ringing. Hey, is Julie here? Is Pablo here? Is Freddie here? Yes, time to come home for supper. That had nothing to do, that wasn't a church function. That was just a culture function. Yeah. That we were. It's kind of like, as I mentioned in the first half, we felt a younger people recognizing they may not be our children, but we felt some sort of responsibility to help them as well, and to provide safe environments for them. And I think the culture has lost a lot of that. And I think the church has lost a lot of that. And by the church, I don't mean the buildings and the organizations. I mean the people in the pews that are sitting and waiting for someone else to do this for them.
Mm-hmm. A friend of mine likes to say, go ahead, Kim.
Paul and Darryl, I think I'll close out.
Yeah, let's just look at the clock. We're running out of time. There's Darryl, I think there's a lot we could discuss for many an hour, but I'm glad for you to spend some time and to learn about the situation. I wish we could have had some more time to talk about the book and what you're working on. Why don't you take a couple minutes and tell us what you've got in the works and where people can get in touch with you and find out more? Okay.
You can go to getthepower.org, getthepower.org. And that's my website. There's some information there. I have a new book coming out called The Secret Superpowers of Teenagers, How to Shape Your Future and Transform the World. And so I'm using sort of a superhero theme because Chase was a big fan of superheroes. So that's the book that's coming out this fall. I don't have a date yet, but it will be out this fall. And it's really a book about how they can develop that life plan, how they can, it's really about success principles and trying to focus more on the positive. This is the book that I wrote about Chase's life. My thinking has changed a lot since I wrote it. It's A Life Half Lived. It's free to download the Kindle version. Like I said, my thinking's changed a lot since I wrote it. I was really angry when I wrote it, but it's just really raw, and you kind of get a really inside view for people who haven't dealt with it of a parent dealing with an addicted child. And then, I wrote the book, Taking the Fight to the Enemy. It's my take on spiritual warfare. So that's also on Amazon now. But I appreciate you taking the time to interview me today and spending the time with me and helping me get my message out there.
I'm glad to. I think it's an important message. I think it's a message not just for, we focus a lot on the churches and the faith communities, but I think for a nation as a whole, to realize that our children are a resource and we really don't want to squander the opportunities we have with them. This is Paul Lenkel with Kim Kennedy. We've been interviewing Darryl Rodgers for Conversations on the Culture. You can listen to this broadcast either on YouTube, Facebook, or at the website cotcus.com. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please include comments on the videos. We'll make sure that Darryl gets them, and maybe share your experiences, your conversations with how do we impact the lives of teenagers and young adults so positively in such a negatively charged atmosphere. Again, Darryl, Kimberly, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your time. Thank you for those who have listened and who have watched. And we will see you again at the next episode of Conversations on the Culture. Have a great day.
Thank you, Paul.